Everybody was dumbfounded when Warner Brothers pulled the plug on the upcoming Batgirl movie, but it's far from the first film to be canceled just shy of its release. And while it's not super common, it's still happened more times than you'd believe. Dozens of big-budget films, even those with big studio budgets and loads of star power, have been ripped right out of our hands. And today, we're listing down 8 of them. Starting off fresh with Batgirl at number 8. Discovery's takeover of Warner Brothers has seen several films and TV shows get canceled, but none were as shocking as the upcoming Batgirl movie. What set Batgirl apart was the fact that it was almost finished when the studio pulled the plug on it. Like, the movie even had a release date, y'all, and they just called it off at the last minute. The studio had reportedly already spent more than $70 million on the project when it was shelved, which honestly makes this whole thing even more surprising. According to rumors, the reason why the movie was abandoned is that audiences' reactions to the film's initial test screenings were overwhelmingly negative. Warner Brothers decided to simply cancel the film because of the negative reaction, choosing to cut their losses rather than risk permanent harm to the DCEU franchise, as if they hadn't done that already. While fans were justifiably outraged by the news, the studio explained that the cancellation was due to a change in strategy and had nothing to do with the cast or crew. Next up, at number 7, Superman Lives. Directed by Tim Burton and written by Kevin Smith, Superman Lives was set to be the next iteration of Superman on film. However, the movie never made it to the theaters. According to reports, pre-production was already in full swing. Sets were built, costumes were ready, and Nick Cage had even shot a few scenes when the film suddenly got the boot. Producer John Peters was mainly responsible for the film's disastrous production, as he persisted in trying to sabotage Smith's script by inserting random ideas intended to boost sales. Tim Burton left the project mid-production as a result of Peters' constant intervention, and Warner Brothers was left with no option but to cancel the project altogether. If anything, at least the movie's spirit lives on through those god-awful pictures of Nick Cage dressed as Superman with a mullet. Moving on to number 6, with the Revenge of the Nerds reboot. When 20th Century Fox first released the raunchy teen comedy Revenge of the Nerds in 1984, it became a huge hit. And you know what happens with hits in Hollywood, right? They get remakes, so studios can make even more money. Well, that's exactly what the plan was with Revenge of the Nerds remake, but it ended up terribly backfiring. The reboot, which is being directed by Kyle Newman and starring Adam Brody, started shooting in November 2006, but was abruptly canceled just 2 weeks later. They didn't even give this one a chance, huh? The reason Fox decided against moving forward with the remake is because it was simply terrible. That's right, apparently the shooting for the first 2 weeks was so bad that the studio head Peter Rice ordered the production to stop right after the dailies screenings. This was reportedly due to the fact that the studio felt audiences wouldn't react to the raunchy nature of the film's story the same way they did back in 1984. There were apparently also plans to revamp the script a little to bring it up with the times, but that never ended up happening, and we're guessing that was probably for the best. While the original 1984 comedy and its sequels are beloved cult classics that helped move the come-of-age comedies movies away from traditional hyper-masculine protagonists, they're textbook examples of aging like milk, especially the movie's climactic romance scene that kinda makes any attempt to reboot the series super problematic. Coming up at number 5, Midnight Rider. You just know things haven't gotten off to a good start when your movie only lasts 1 day of filming before a tragic accident happens. This is exactly what happened in the case of Midnight Rider, which was a Gregg Allman biopic set to star William Hurt in the lead role. But the cameras never really even got a chance to start rolling, as catastrophe struck on the first day of principal photography. A crew member was unfortunately killed while filming on a railroad bridge. You see, the production crew thought that the track was out of use and they had free range over it, but that ended up not being the case, and one team member was struck by an approaching freight train. Aside from having to deal with the trauma of losing a team member under such terrible circumstances, the legal troubles that followed made it impossible to resume production. To make matters worse, it soon emerged that what was being seen as an accident was actually disgusting negligence on the studio's part. Apparently, the director and producers did not get the appropriate permissions they needed before filming on the bridge. This revelation led to a number of people being charged with, and in most cases, found guilty of a series of crimes, including involuntary manslaughter. Let's follow that up with Creation at number 4. Not every abandoned movie leads to heartbreak. Instead, a lot of times, an incomplete movie can lay the groundwork for a much better project in the future. This was the case for Willis O'Brien's Creation, which was canceled mid-production production, but eventually led us to one of Hollywood's most beloved monsters, King Kong. You see, studio executives complained about the action-light plot and high production costs and eventually called off the film. Might have been a bummer at the time, but with hindsight, we think we can all agree it was for the best. Before the film was canceled, one of the studio's bigwigs, Marion C. Cooper, recognized O'Brien's talent for special effects and hired him to handle the same responsibilities on Kong. This is why there are a lot of crossovers between the two films. In fact, Cooper's 1933 masterpiece even used the same dinosaur models made for creation. Now, at number 3, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. The Man Who Killed Don Quixote by Terry Gilliam is arguably the most well-known example of a film that was abandoned mid-shoot. This 1998-2000 production starred big names like Johnny Depp and Jean Rochefort and was based on Miguel de Cervantes' classic Don Quixote. But when the cameras started rolling, it ran into a number of unsolvable problems. For starters, filming was an absolute nightmare. You see, someone thought it would be a great idea to film the movie on location in Spain. The only problem was, the location in question was situated right beside a military base. The noise from the base rendered the audio from these scenes completely unusable. Then, to make matters worse, a flash flood hit the area and destroyed a lot of filming equipment. And while they could have always replaced the lost equipment, the flood also severely altered the surrounding landscape. This meant a lot of the scenes had to be reshot in order to ensure continuity. And if that wasn't enough, the final nail in the coffin came when Rochefort suffered a slip disc and was forced to bow out. After this, the producers finally called it quits. Coming in second, Gossip. Gary Oldman is rightfully considered one of the greatest actors of his generation, but did you know that his planned film debut ended up being scrapped? Gossip was supposed to be a scathing indictment of Thatcher's Britain. The film began filming in 1982 and was slated to star Gary Oldman. There were huge hopes for this project, but all that changed when the project's financial backers, the Martini Foundation, failed to provide the funding they had promised to the production company, putting the project to bed for good. The worst part is that the lack of funding left director Don Boyd over £1 million in debt. With the banks on his doorstep, Boyd's life only got harder when the unions representing his cast and crew started asking for their checks. It would take Boyd years to clean up this whole mess, and even longer to helm another movie. And finally, at the number 1 spot, it's Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4. The first 3 Spider-Man movies were a massive success, with each one earning close to $1 billion at the box office. Seeing the franchise's potential, Sony rehired director Sam Raimi to helm the 4th installment. However, as it is with such projects, the studio had strict requirements regarding how quickly Raimi should produce the film. All they cared about was putting out a movie. Quality, production, nothing else mattered. When Raimi saw this, he decided to pull out of the project. Many people thought that Sony would just get another director to sit the chair for Spider-Man 4, but in a move that still surprises many, they decided to shelve the highly successful franchise and make a reboot instead, which ironically enough also got canceled after 2 movies. That's a wrap for this video. Which movie cancellation bummed you out the most? Do you think there's still hope for any of the movies mentioned on today's list? Let us know in the comment section below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.